The mop bucket rolled across the marble floor with a soft squeak. It was almost midnight, and the 42nd floor of Sterling Industries was finally empty. Well, almost empty. David pushed the bucket toward the corner office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city lights. He'd been working as a night janitor here for exactly 2 weeks now. 2 weeks of invisible existence where people looked through him rather than at him. He didn't mind, really. That was the whole point. "Oh, you're still here." A woman's voice cut through the silence. David looked up. She was standing by her desk, laptop still open, coffee cup in hand. Mid-30s, sharp business suit, tired eyes. Her desk nameplate read, "Rebecca Torres, Marketing Manager." "Just finishing up, ma'am," David said quietly, already moving his cart to the side. "I can come back later if you need more time." No, it's fine." She waved her hand dismissively, not really looking at him. "I'm leaving in 5 minutes anyway. Just need to send one more email." She paused, glancing at the coffee cup. "Oh, could you grab this when you come through?" "Thanks." She set it on the edge of her desk and returned to her laptop, already forgotten about him. David nodded even though she wasn't watching. He'd gotten used to this. The half-sentences. The assumptions. The way people talked about sensitive company business right in front of him, as if janitors didn't have ears. And honestly, he was learning more from these late-night shifts than he ever did from the corporate reports his father used to forward him. Sterling Industries had been his father's life work. Thomas Chen had built this company from nothing, turning a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation. But 6 months ago, his father had called him home from his comfortable consulting job in Seattle. "I'm sick, son," his father had said, voice rough with exhaustion. "The doctors give me maybe a year, probably less. And I need to know this company will survive after I'm gone. Dad, I'll come back. I'll learn everything. You'll learn nothing sitting in the executive office." His father had fixed him with that sharp look that meant he'd already made up his mind. "You want to really understand this company? Start at the bottom. See what I can't see anymore from up here." So here he was, David Chen, with his MBA from Stanford and 5 years of consulting experience, emptying trash cans and mopping floors. His father had arranged everything through a trusted HR contact. As far as anyone knew, David was just another person trying to make ends meet. Finally, Rebecca's frustrated voice echoed across the empty floor. "Why won't this just, ugh?" David glanced over. She was staring at her screen, hands gripping the edge of her desk. "Everything okay?" he asked, knowing he probably shouldn't. She looked up, surprised he was still there. For a moment, she seemed ready to brush him off. Then her shoulders sagged. "No, honestly, everything's a mess." She laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "We've got this huge product launch in 6 weeks, and the design team and the development team refuse to talk to each other. Both sides keep complaining to me, expecting me to fix it, but nobody actually wants to compromise." She stopped suddenly, as if remembering who she was talking to. "Sorry, you don't need to hear about this." "Sounds frustrating," David offered. "It is." She rubbed her temples. "And the executives upstairs? They just keep pushing for faster results without understanding why things are stuck. It's like they've forgotten what it's like to actually work down here with the rest of us." David filed that away mentally. He'd read the reports about interdepartmental cooperation. On paper, everything looked fine. In reality, not so much. "Maybe they need someone to tell them," he said carefully. Rebecca gave him a tired smile. "Right. Because they're really going to listen to a marketing manager. I'm just another face in the building to them." She paused. "No offense to you, I mean. I'm sure you know what that's like." "Yeah," David said softly. "I do." She packed up her bag, grabbed her phone, and headed for the elevator. "Have a good night," she called over her shoulder. "You too." David watched her go, then returned to his work. He sprayed cleaner on her desk, wiped it down, and picked up the coffee cup she'd left behind. Half full, lipstick mark on the rim, still slightly warm. He moved through the floor methodically, emptying trash bins, cleaning desks, vacuuming carpets. While he worked, he noticed things. Printed emails complaining about the same issues Rebecca had mentioned, sticky notes with frustrated comments about management, an anonymous survey someone had started, asking if people felt heard by leadership. 90% had answered no. His phone buzzed. A text from his father. "How's it going?" "Eye-opening," David typed back. "Good. Remember, watch and learn. Don't try to fix anything yet, that was the hardest part." David saw the problem so clearly now. The disconnect between floors. The way good ideas died in middle management. The talented people getting frustrated and starting to look elsewhere. But his father was right. If he revealed himself now, people would tell him what they thought he wanted to hear. They'd be careful, political, strategic. He'd never get the truth. Over the next week, David kept running into Rebecca. She worked late almost every night, always stressed, always buried in problems that shouldn't have been hers to solve alone. Thursday night, she was on the phone in the conference room. David was wiping down tables nearby. "I understand your concerns, but we can't launch without proper testing," she was saying, voice tight with frustration. "I don't care what the timeline says. No, I'm not being difficult, I'm being realistic. Fine, yes, I'll make it work somehow." She ended the call and dropped her head onto the table with a thud. "Rough day?" David asked. She lifted her head, surprised to see him. "Is it that obvious?" "Little bit." She laughed, a real laugh this time. "They want us to launch a product that's not ready because moving the date would make the quarterly report look bad. Never mind that launching something broken will make everything look worse." "That doesn't make much sense," David said. "Welcome to corporate life." She straightened up. "Sorry, I keep unloading on you. You probably have your own problems." "It's okay," David said honestly. "Sometimes it helps to talk." She studied him for a moment, really looked at him. "You seem pretty smart for—" She stopped, catching herself. "That came out wrong. For a janitor?" David finished, not unkindly. She had the grace to look embarrassed. "Yeah, sorry, that was rude." "It's honest," David said with a slight smile. "And you're not wrong. I did go to college. Things just didn't work out the way I planned. It wasn't entirely a lie." "Well," Rebecca said, standing and gathering her things. "For what it's worth, you're the only person in this building who actually listens when I talk. So thank you for that." As she walked away, David realized something. When he eventually took over as CEO, he'd need people like her. People who cared about doing things right, not just doing things fast. People who saw problems clearly and weren't afraid to speak up. He just hoped she'd still trust him after she learned the truth, because in 3 weeks, everything was going to change. 3 weeks had passed since David started working at Sterling Industries, and his late-night conversations with Rebecca had become something of a routine. She'd stay late working on the product launch, and he'd clean the offices while they talked, about everything from company politics to their favorite coffee shops. Tonight was different, though. Tonight, Rebecca looked defeated. David found her sitting on the floor of her office, back against the wall, surrounded by papers. Her shoes were kicked off to the side, and she had that look people get when they've hit their limit. "Hey," he said softly from the doorway. "You okay?" She looked up, and he could see her eyes were red. She'd been crying. "Not really," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I think I'm about to lose my job." David set down his cleaning supplies and sat down across from her, keeping a respectful distance. "What happened?" "The product launch is a disaster, complete disaster." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I've been warning them for weeks that we weren't ready, that the teams weren't communicating, that we needed more time, but nobody wanted to hear it. And now? Now the beta testing came back and it's worse than I thought. The software crashes every 20 minutes. The user interface makes no sense. And guess who's getting blamed for not coordinating the teams better?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Me. As if I have any actual authority to make people work together." David listened, his mind already working through solutions, but he caught himself. Not yet. He was still just the janitor. "That doesn't seem fair," he said. "Fair?" Rebecca shook her head. "Nothing about this place is fair. The executives make bad decisions and we're the ones who have to make them work. And when we can't perform miracles, we're the problem." She pulled her knees up to her chest, looking suddenly younger and more vulnerable. "I worked so hard to get here, you know. I thought if I just did good work, if I was smart and dedicated, that would be enough. But it's not about the work. It's about who you know. It's about politics and playing games I don't know how to play." "Maybe you're playing the wrong game," David said quietly. She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean, maybe the game itself is broken. Maybe instead of trying to win at a broken game, someone needs to change the rules." Rebecca studied him for a long moment. You really did go to college, didn't you? You're way too insightful to be just. She trailed off, looking embarrassed again. Just a janitor. David finished with a small smile. It's okay. You can say it. That's not what I meant. I just mean you're clearly smart. Really smart. What happened? If you don't mind me asking. David had prepared for this question. Bad timing, mostly. Graduated right when the economy tanked. Couldn't find work in my field. Student loans piled up. Sometimes life doesn't go according to plan. It wasn't entirely untrue. He just left out the part about his field being management consulting and his plan being to join his father's company on his own terms, after proving himself elsewhere first. I'm sorry, Rebecca said. That must be frustrating. Sometimes, David admitted, but you learn a lot from being invisible. People don't guard what they say around you. You see how things really work, not how they're supposed to work. And what have you learned about this place? David chose his words carefully. I've learned that there are a lot of good people here trying to do good work, but the structure makes it almost impossible. Everyone's trapped in their own silo. The people at the top don't see the problems, and the people who see the problems can't reach the top. Rebecca nodded slowly. That's exactly it. That's exactly the problem. She paused. You should be in management, not cleaning offices. Maybe someday, David said with a slight smile. She stood up, brushing off her skirt and trying to pull herself together. Sorry for the breakdown. I shouldn't dump all this on you. Hey, David said, standing too. Everyone needs someone to talk to sometimes, especially when things are hard. Thanks. She gave him a genuine smile. You know, you're the only person in this entire building who actually listens. Everyone else is so busy trying to climb the ladder, they forget to be human. Over the next few days, David watched as the product launch crisis unfolded. He'd position his cleaning cart near conference rooms where emergency meetings were held. He'd empty trash bins that were full of crumpled drafts of damage control plans, and he watched Rebecca work harder than anyone, trying to save a project that had been doomed from the start by poor planning and ego. Friday night, David found her, in the break room at 11 p.m., staring at the coffee machine like it held the answers to the universe. You've been here since 7 this morning, he observed. 16 hours, she confirmed. New personal record, not one I'm proud of. You should go home. Can't. Meeting with the executives first thing Monday morning. I need to have a miracle ready by then. David poured her a fresh cup of coffee and handed it to her. You can't fix everything, you know. Some problems are bigger than one person. I have to try, she said stubbornly. If I don't, they'll just blame me anyway. At least this way I know I did everything I could. Something in her determination reminded David of his father, that same stubborn refusal to give up even when the odds were stacked against you. What if I told you the system is designed to fail? David asked. Rebecca raised an eyebrow. Getting philosophical on me, janitor guy? I'm serious. What if the problem isn't you or your team? What if it's the way the whole company is organized? Would you change it if you could? Of course I would, she said without hesitation. I'd tear down half these departments and rebuild from scratch. I'd make sure people actually talk to each other. I'd give the people doing the work some actual say in how it gets done. She laughed. But that's never going to happen. The people with the power to change things don't want to change them. What if they did? David pressed. What if someone at the top actually wanted to listen? What would you tell them? Rebecca looked at him strangely. Why are you asking me this? Just curious, David said. You clearly care about this place, even when it doesn't care back. That's rare. She thought about it, really thought about it. I'd tell them to get out of their offices and see what's really happening. I'd tell them that their employees aren't resources to be managed. They're people with good ideas who want to do meaningful work. I'd tell them that respect flows both ways, and you can't demand loyalty from people you treat as replaceable. She took a sip of her coffee. But mostly I'd tell them to remember what it was like before they had power, before they had the fancy titles and the corner offices, because I think that's when they forget. That's when they stop seeing the people around them as people. David felt something settle in his chest. His father had been right to send him here. These were the lessons he needed to learn. These were the truths that never made it into board meetings. "For what it's worth," David said, "I think you'd make a great leader someday." Rebecca laughed, but it was a sad sound. "Thanks, but I'll probably be unemployed by Tuesday." "Maybe not," David said quietly. "You're an optimist. I like that about you." She finished her coffee and stood up. "I should get back to work. These presentations won't write themselves." "Rebecca," David said as she turned to leave. She looked back. "Don't quit," he said. "Whatever happens Monday, don't quit. Promise me." She looked confused but nodded. "Okay, I promise." As she walked away, David pulled out his phone and texted his father. "I'm ready. Schedule the announcement for Monday morning." His father's response came quickly. "You're sure?" David thought about Rebecca sitting on the floor of her office crying because she cared too much. He thought about all the other talented people in this building who were being wasted by bad leadership and broken systems. "I'm sure," he typed back. "It's time." Monday morning, everything would change. And David could only hope that people like Rebecca would give him a chance to prove that not everyone with power forgets where they came from. He had 3 days to prepare for the moment when the invisible janitor would become the most visible person in the building. 3 days until Rebecca learned the truth. Monday morning came too fast. Rebecca stood in the bathroom mirror adjusting her blazer for the 3rd time. Her hands were shaking. In 20 minutes, she'd walk into a conference room full of executives and try to explain why the product launch had failed. Try to convince them it wasn't all her fault. She'd practiced her presentation all weekend. She had data, timelines, documentation of every warning she'd given, but she knew how these things went. Someone had to take the blame, and she was the easiest target. "You've got this," she whispered to her reflection. "Just tell the truth." The email had come Sunday night. Emergency all-hands meeting at 9 a.m. Mandatory attendance for all employees. That never meant anything good. Rebecca made her way to the large auditorium on the ground floor. It was already packed. People were whispering, speculating. The rumor mill had been working overtime all weekend. "I heard they're doing layoffs," someone behind her muttered. "No, I heard they're selling the company. My friend in HR said the old man is stepping down." Rebecca found a seat in the middle section, trying to make herself invisible. Her phone buzzed. A text from her mom. "Good luck today, honey. Remember, you're stronger than you think." If only that were true. The lights dimmed. The company's chief operating officer, Mr. Peterson, walked onto the stage. He looked serious, tired, old. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began. "I know there's been a lot of speculation, so I'll get straight to the point. As many of you know, our founder, Thomas Chen, has been battling illness for some time now." A heavy silence fell over the room. "Thomas has decided it's time to step down as CEO. This company has been his life's work, and he wants to ensure it continues to thrive long after he's gone." Peterson paused. "But he's not leaving us without leadership. In fact, he's been preparing his successor for this moment for quite some time." Rebecca felt a pang of sympathy for the old man. She'd never met him personally, but everyone knew his story. Immigrant parents started with nothing, built an empire through hard work and innovation. "I'd like to introduce you to Sterling Industries' new CEO, Peterson continued. "He's been with us for the past month, learning the company from the ground up. Please welcome David Chen." The screen behind Peterson lit up with a professional photo. Rebecca's brain took a moment to process what her eyes were seeing. No, that couldn't be right. A man walked onto the stage, and Rebecca's heart stopped. Tailored navy suit, confident stride, clean-shaven. But the face. She knew that face, David, the janitor. Her janitor, except he wasn't a janitor at all. The room erupted in polite applause, but Rebecca couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Her mind was racing through every conversation they'd had, every complaint she'd made about management. Every time she'd dismissed him, talked down to him, treated him like he was less than, oh God. She'd cried in front of him. She'd complained about the executives. She'd told him the CEO's son would probably be some spoiled kid who didn't understand real work. She wanted to disappear, to melt into her chair and cease to exist. On stage, David had taken the microphone. He looked different somehow, not just the clothes. He carried himself differently. This was who he really was. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson," David said, his voice clear and confident. "I know this comes as a surprise to many of you. Some of you might be wondering why I spent the last month working as a janitor instead of sitting in an office upstairs. You could hear a pin drop in that auditorium. My father taught me that you can't lead people you don't understand, and you can't understand them from behind a desk." He paused, scanning the crowd. "So I wanted to see this company the way most of you see it. Not through reports and presentations, but through lived experience." Rebecca felt her cheeks burning. She tried to sink lower in her seat. "What I learned shocked me," David continued. "I learned that we have incredibly talented, dedicated people working here. People who care deeply about the quality of their work. People with brilliant ideas that never make it past their immediate supervisors." He clicked a remote and a slide appeared behind him. It showed the organizational chart of Sterling Industries, all boxes and lines and hierarchies. "I also learned that our structure is broken. We've built walls between departments that should be working together. We've created layers of management that slow everything down. And worst of all, we've stopped listening to the people who actually do the work." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the usual corporate speech. "Over the past month, I've had conversations with many of you, not as a CEO, but as a colleague. You told me things you'd never tell someone in a suit. You showed me problems I never would have seen from an executive office." David's eyes seemed to sweep across the audience, and for one terrifying moment, Rebecca thought he was looking directly at her. "One person told me that respect flows both ways, that you can't demand loyalty from people you treat as replaceable." She was right. Rebecca's heart hammered in her chest. Was he talking about her? He couldn't be, could he? "So here's what's going to change," David said, his voice firm. "Effective immediately, we're restructuring how this company operates. We're breaking down the silos. We're creating cross-functional teams with actual authority to make decisions. And we're implementing an open-door policy not just in theory, but in practice." He clicked to another slide. "We're also launching what I'm calling the ground floor initiative. Every executive, including me, will spend 1 week each quarter working in a different department. Not observing, actually working. Because leadership isn't about sitting at the top. It's about understanding every level." The murmuring grew louder. People were sitting up straighter. This was different. This was actually different. "I know some of you are skeptical," David acknowledged. "You've heard promises before, but I'm not asking you to trust me based on words. I'm asking you to hold me accountable. If you see something that isn't working, tell me. If you have an idea, share it. If you think I'm making a mistake, challenge me." He paused, letting that sink in. "My father built this company on the belief that everyone deserves a chance to do meaningful work. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that. I'm here to bring it back." The applause started slowly, then built. People were standing. Rebecca remained frozen in her seat, her mind still reeling. "Now I know we have some immediate challenges to address," David continued once the applause died down. "The product launch that was scheduled for next month is being postponed. Not canceled, postponed. We're going to do it right, even if it takes longer." Rebecca's head snapped up. He was talking about her project. The team working on that project did everything they could with the constraints they were given. The failure wasn't theirs. It was a failure of leadership. My leadership. He looked straight into the crowd. "To everyone who tried to raise concerns and wasn't heard, I'm sorry. That changes now." The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, but Rebecca barely heard it. Her mind was stuck on a loop, replaying every interaction with David, the late-night conversations, the way he'd listened. The advice he'd given, he'd known. The whole time he'd known exactly who he was and what was coming. And she'd treated him like what? Like someone less important? No, she hadn't. Not after those first few days. She'd treated him like a friend. Like someone whose opinion mattered. She'd been herself around him, more herself than she was with most of her colleagues. But the question that kept circling her mind was simple and terrifying. Had any of it been real? Or had she just been part of his undercover research project? The meeting ended. People flooded toward the exits, buzzing with excitement and speculation. Rebecca sat in her chair, unable to move. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Rebecca, please come to the executive floor. Conference room C, we need to talk." David, her stomach dropped. This was it. He was going to fire her face to face, maybe lecture her about every dismissive thing she'd said. She stood on shaky legs and made her way to the elevator. The ride to the 42nd floor felt like it took forever and no time at all. Conference room C had glass walls. She could see David inside, standing by the window, still in that perfect suit. He looked like he belonged there. Rebecca knocked softly. He turned and waved her in. "Close the door," he said gently. She did, her heart pounding. "Look, I owe you an apology," David said, cutting her off. Rebecca blinked. "You what?" "I deceived you. I let you believe I was someone I wasn't. That wasn't fair." He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly less CEO and more like the guy who'd sat on the floor with her at midnight. "I had my reasons, but that doesn't make it right." "I'm the one who should apologize," Rebecca said quickly. "Some of the things I said about management, about the CEO's son, were honest," David finished. "And exactly what I needed to hear." They stood in awkward silence. "Am I fired?" Rebecca asked finally. David looked genuinely shocked. "Fired?" "Rebecca, I asked you here because I need your help, my help. Everything I said out there about restructuring, about fixing this company. I can't do it alone. I need people who understand what's actually broken. People who care enough to tell the truth even when it's uncomfortable." He met her eyes. "People like you." Rebecca didn't know what to say. "I'm creating a special task force to oversee the transformation. I want you to lead it." The room spun slightly. "You want me to what?" Rebecca stared at David like he'd just spoken a foreign language. "You want me to lead it? Why would you trust me with something like that?" David pulled out a chair and gestured for her to sit. After a moment's hesitation, she did. He sat across from her, and suddenly they were back to those late-night conversations. Except everything was different now. "Because you were right," David said simply. "About everything. The silos, the communication problems, the way leadership had stopped listening. You saw it all clearly and you weren't afraid to talk about it." "I talked about it to a janitor," Rebecca said, still processing. "To someone I thought had no power to do anything about it." "Exactly." David leaned forward. "That's when people are most honest. When they're not trying to impress anyone or protect their position. You told me the truth because you cared about the work, not because you were trying to get ahead." Rebecca felt her defenses rising. "So this was all just some test? All those conversations, you sitting with me when I was having a breakdown, that was you gathering research?" "No," David's voice was firm. "That's not what this was. Yes, I was learning. But Rebecca, those conversations were real. Your frustration was real. Your ideas were real. And my respect for you is absolutely real." She wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. "How am I supposed to know what was genuine and what was part of your undercover project?" David was quiet for a moment. "That's fair. I get why you'd question that." He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "Can I tell you something that wasn't part of any project?" "Okay." "That night when you were on the floor of your office crying because you thought you'd failed, I wanted to tell you right then who I was. I wanted to tell you that the failure wasn't yours, that the system had set you up to fail." He turned back to face her. "But I couldn't, because my father was right. If I'd revealed myself too early, I wouldn't have learned what I needed to learn." "And what did you need to learn? That this company has amazing people who are being held back by terrible structure. That the problems aren't the employees, they're the systems. And that somewhere along the way we forgot that businesses are made of people, not just profit margins." Rebecca felt some of her anger softening, but she wasn't ready to let it go completely. "So what now? You put me in charge of some task force, I do all the hard work of restructuring, and you get credit for being the visionary CEO?" David actually smiled at that. "There's the Rebecca I know, not afraid to challenge anyone." He returned to his chair. "Here's the truth. I need you because I can't do this alone. I can give orders from the top, but unless the people doing the actual work believe in the changes, nothing will stick." "And you think they'll listen to me?" "I think they'll listen to someone who's been in the trenches with them. Someone who's fought the same battles they've fought." He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "This is my proposal for the transformation. I want you to tear it apart. Tell me what's wrong with it. Tell me what I'm missing." Rebecca opened the folder cautiously. Inside were detailed plans for restructuring departments, new communication protocols, employee feedback systems. It was thorough. Impressive even. But as she read, she started seeing the gaps. The places where theory met reality and would probably break down. "This timeline is too aggressive," she said, tapping one page. You're trying to restructure 3 departments simultaneously. That's a recipe for chaos. Okay, what would you do instead? Start with 1. Prove the model works, then expand. She flipped to another page. And this communication protocol sounds good on paper, but middle managers will see it as a threat. They'll resist. So how do we get them on board? Rebecca looked up at him. He was genuinely listening, leaning forward, focused on her words. Just like he had when he was the janitor. Maybe that was the point. Maybe he'd always been this person. You include them in the design, she said slowly. Make them part of the solution instead of part of the problem. They're defensive because they feel attacked. If you make them partners in the change, they might actually help instead of hindering. David nodded, making notes on his tablet. That's good. That's really good. What else? For the next hour, they went through his plans page by page. Rebecca found herself getting drawn in despite her reservations. She pointed out flaws, suggested alternatives, challenged his assumptions. And David took it all in, not defensively, but eagerly. You're really okay with me criticizing your plan? She asked at one point. Rebecca, if I wanted someone to just agree with everything I say, I'd hire a yes man. I asked you here because you're not afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. He grinned. Besides, you've been critiquing my ideas for weeks. This is just the first time I can actually implement your suggestions. She felt a small smile tugging at her lips. I really did complain a lot, didn't I? You really did. It was incredibly helpful. They both laughed, and for the first time since that morning's revelation, Rebecca felt some of the tension ease. Can I ask you something? She said. Anything. Why'd you choose to be a janitor specifically? You could have gone undercover in any department. David set down his tablet. Because janitors are invisible. People say things around them they'd never say otherwise. And also, he paused, my father started this company with nothing. Before he made it big, he worked every job you can imagine. Janitor, warehouse worker, assembly line. He wanted me to understand that no honest work is beneath anyone. That's actually pretty wise, he's a pretty wise guy. Stubborn as hell, but wise. David's expression grew more serious. Look, I know this is a lot to process. And I know I'm asking you to trust me when I've just proven I'm capable of keeping major secrets. You don't have to decide right now about the task force. What happens if I say no? Then I respect your decision and find someone else. Your job is safe either way, Rebecca. This isn't a test or an ultimatum. It's a genuine offer because I think you're the right person for this. Rebecca looked down at the folder, then back at David. A month ago, she'd been certain her career was going nowhere. She'd been frustrated, overworked, and invisible to the people who mattered. Now the CEO was asking for her help to transform the company. The CEO who used to clean her office. It was absurd. It was overwhelming. And despite everything, it felt right. I need time to think, she said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. David? Yeah? Those conversations we had? Late at night. Were you ever just David? Not the CEO's son, not someone gathering information, just you? He met her eyes, and his answer was immediate. Every single time. That was the only time I got to be just David. No expectations, no pressure, no pretending. Just someone talking to someone else who understood. He smiled softly. Those were the most real conversations I've had in years. Something in Rebecca's chest loosened. Okay. I'll do it. I'll lead your task force. She took a breath. But I have conditions. Name them. I report directly to you. No layers of management filtering what you hear. And if I think something's a bad idea, I get to say so without worrying about politics or my job. Done. And one more thing. She crossed her arms. No more secrets. If we're doing this, we do it honestly. I need to know I can trust what you tell me. David stood and extended his hand. No more secrets. You have my word. Rebecca shook his hand and felt the shift. They weren't just the janitor and the manager anymore. They were partners, colleagues, maybe even still friends, though that relationship would take time to rebuild. Over the next 3 months, Rebecca threw herself into the transformation project. She worked with department heads, interviewed employees at every level, and redesigned workflows that had been broken for years. It was exhausting, challenging, and more fulfilling than anything she'd ever done. And through it all, David kept his word. He showed up to every meeting she requested. He listened to her feedback, even when she told him his ideas wouldn't work. He backed her up when other executives pushed back against the changes, but something else was happening too. Something neither of them had planned for. They worked late together, often ordering dinner to the conference room and mapping out strategies. They celebrated small victories and problem-solved through setbacks. They laughed about the absurdity of their early conversations, back when she'd thought he was just the thoughtful janitor. And slowly, carefully, a different kind of partnership was forming. Rebecca tried to ignore it at first. He was the CEO, she reported to him. Getting involved would be complicated, messy, potentially career-ending. But there were moments. His hand brushing hers when they both reached for the same document. The way he looked at her when she was passionately explaining a new idea. The time she caught him watching her with an expression that had nothing to do with business. One evening, after successfully implementing the new structure in their first pilot department, they stood at his office window watching the sunset over the city. "We did it," Rebecca said softly. "It's actually working." "You did it," David corrected. "I just gave you the authority. You made it happen." She turned to look at him. "We make a good team." "Yeah," he said, his voice quiet. "We do." The air between them felt charged, full of things neither of them was quite brave enough to say. Rebecca's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. She glanced at it and her expression. Rebecca stared at her phone, her smile fading. David noticed immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked. "It's from Tech Vision," she said slowly. "They want to meet with me tomorrow." Tech Vision? That's one of our biggest competitors. Yeah. Rebecca pocketed her phone, suddenly unable to meet his eyes. "They've been trying to recruit me for a few weeks now." The sunset didn't seem quite as beautiful anymore. David turned away from the window, his expression carefully neutral. "And you're considering it?" "I don't know," Rebecca admitted. "I wasn't, but then they sent this." She pulled up an email and showed him. The job title read Chief Marketing Officer. The salary was nearly double what she made now. David read it in silence. When he looked up, his face was unreadable. "That's an incredible offer." "It is. You'd be stupid not to take it." Something in his tone stung. "Is that what you really think?" David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd come to recognize as him trying to keep his emotions in check. "I think you deserve every opportunity that comes your way. And I think Tech Vision would be lucky to have you. But nothing," he said, though his voice said otherwise. "This is your career, Rebecca. I'm not going to stand in your way." "I didn't say I was taking it. You didn't say you weren't." They stood in tense silence. Rebecca felt frustration building in her chest. After everything they'd been through, after all the trust they'd rebuilt, he was suddenly putting up walls again. "Why are you being like this?" she asked. "Like what?" "Like you don't care whether I stay or go." David's careful mask cracked. "Because if I tell you how I really feel, it'll make this harder for you. And the last thing I want is to be another reason you feel trapped." "Trapped?" "David, I don't feel trapped. Don't you?" He stepped closer. "Be honest. How much of your decision to stay is about the work? And how much is about not wanting to disappoint me? Or worse, how much is about whatever this is between us?" Rebecca felt her cheeks flush. So he'd noticed it too. The tension, the unspoken feelings, the way they'd both been dancing around something neither of them knew how to name. "I don't know," she said quietly. "Maybe all of it." "Is that so wrong?" "It is if it means you're giving up opportunities because you feel obligated to stay. That's not what this is." "Then what is it?" David's voice rose slightly, frustration finally breaking through. "Because from where I'm standing, you have a chance to run your own department at a major company. No complications, no power dynamics, just you and your talent. And I can't be the reason you don't take that." Rebecca stepped back, hurt flooding through her. "You think I can't make my own decisions? That I need you to protect me from myself?" "That's not what I meant." "Then what did you mean?" David was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. "I mean that I care about you too much to be selfish. These past few months working with you have been the best part of my day. Every day. And somewhere along the way it stopped being just professional." Rebecca's breath caught. "But I'm your boss," David continued. "And no matter how much we try to pretend that doesn't matter, it does. People will talk. They'll say you only got promoted because of me. They'll question every achievement you earn. And you deserve better than that. So what are you saying?" Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm saying take the job at Tech Vision. Build something amazing. Show the world what you're capable of without anyone questioning whether you earned it. And us? David's smile was sad. There is no us, Rebecca. There can't be. Not while you work for me. Rebecca felt tears prick her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. You know what's funny? A few months ago I thought you were nobody. Just a guy with a mop and a bucket. And you were more real with me then than you're being right now. Rebecca, no, let me finish. She took a breath, steadying herself. That guy, the one who sat on the floor with me at midnight and told me I was stronger than I thought, he didn't hide behind excuses or make decisions for me. He listened. He believed in me. Where is that guy now? I'm trying to do what's right. For who? For me or for you? She grabbed her bag. I'll think about the Tech Vision offer. And I'll let you know my decision. But David, next time you want to push someone away because you're scared, maybe just be honest about it. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding as she walked to the elevator. She didn't cry until she was in her car. That night, Rebecca couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the conversation, David's words echoing in her head. He cared about her.
He'd admitted it.
But he was also willing to let her go. Maybe he was right. Maybe taking the Tech Vision job was the smart move. Clean break, fresh start, no complications. But something about it felt wrong, like running away instead of running toward something. Her phone rang at 2 a.m. She almost didn't answer, but the name on the screen made her pick up. David? I can't sleep. His voice was tired. I keep thinking about what you said, about the guy with the mop. Rebecca sat up in bed. It's 2 a.m. I know. I'm sorry. But I need to tell you something, and I need to say it now before I lose my nerve. Okay, you were right. I'm scared. He let out a shaky breath. I'm scared of messing this up. I'm scared of what people will say. I'm scared that you'll wake up one day and realize you stayed for the wrong reasons. But mostly I'm scared of losing you, which is exactly what I'm doing by pushing you away. Rebecca's grip tightened on her phone. That guy with the mop. He was just David. No title, no pressure, no expectations. He could be honest because he had nothing to lose. His voice grew stronger. But I'm still him, Rebecca. I'm still the guy who thinks you're the smartest person in any room, who admires your passion and your integrity, who looks forward to every moment we spend together, whether we're fixing broken departments or arguing about timeline strategies. David, let me finish, please. He paused. You asked what I really think. Here it is. I think you should take whichever job makes you happiest. If that's Tech Vision, I'll cheer you on from here. If that's staying at Sterling, I promise to make sure everyone knows you earned every bit of success that comes your way. And if somewhere down the line when the power dynamics aren't an issue anymore, if there's still something between us, he trailed off. Then we'll figure it out. Together. Rebecca felt tears streaming down her face, but this time they were different tears. Are you still there? David asked softly. I'm here. She wiped her eyes. Can I tell you what I think now? Please. I think you're overthinking this. Yes, you're the CEO. Yes, there's a power dynamic. But David, I'm not some fragile person who can't handle workplace politics. I've dealt with worse. She smiled through her tears. And honestly, the fact that you're worried about it, that you care about protecting my reputation and my career, that tells me everything I need to know about who you are. So what are you saying? I'm saying I'm not taking the Tech Vision job. Not because of you, but because the work we're doing here matters to me. We're actually changing things, making them better. I'm not ready to walk away from that. She could hear David's relief through the phone. Are you sure? I'm sure. But I do have one condition. What's that? We do this the right way. Transparent, professional, with clear boundaries. If something develops between us, it happens naturally over time, when we're both certain it's real and not just proximity or convenience. I can do that, David said. I want to do that. Good, now go to sleep. We have a meeting at 8. Yes, ma'am. She could hear the smile in his voice. Rebecca? Yeah? Thank you. For seeing past the title, for believing in what we're building, for being you. Good night, David. Good night. 6 months later, Sterling Industries had transformed. The pilot programs had expanded company-wide. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. And the product that had once been a disaster? It finally launched to rave reviews. Rebecca stood on stage at the company conference presenting the results of the transformation initiative to a room full of employees. David sat in the front row, watching her with undisguised pride. After her presentation, after the applause died down, she found him waiting by the exit. "You were incredible up there," he said. "We were incredible," she corrected. "This was a team effort. Still taking all the credit, boss?" A familiar voice called out. They turned to see the building's current night janitor, an older woman named Helen, pushing her cart past them. "Good night." "Helen," Rebecca called, waving. "Good night, you two. Don't work too late." As Helen disappeared around the corner, Rebecca turned to David with a grin. "Think she knows? That I used to do her job? Probably not. That we're terrible at hiding our feelings? Definitely," David laughed. "Are we that obvious?" "Completely." Rebecca checked her watch. "You know, it's 8 p.m. technically. We're no longer in work hours." "Technically," David agreed, his eyes warm. "And technically, if someone who happened to be the CEO asked someone who happened to be a VP to dinner, that would be two adults making their own choices." "That's very technical of you," Rebecca smiled. "So, are you going to ask or do I have to?" David held out his hand. "Rebecca Torres, would you have dinner with me? Not as CEO to VP, not as colleagues, just as two people who've been dancing around this for way too long." She took his hand. "I thought you'd never ask." As they walked out of Sterling Industries together, David thought about that first night he'd pushed a mop across these same floors. He